It was a quiet night inside Michael Jackson's home, far from the stage lights and screaming crowds. No cameras, no fans, just family. But beneath the long dining table, hidden from adult conversations and polite smiles, Prince Jackson was crying silently. His small body was curled up, his hands covering his face, trying not to make a sound. He thought no one noticed. But Michael noticed everything, especially when it came to his children. What happened next was not something the world ever saw on stage. Michael Jackson slowly knelt down, reached under the table, took his son's trembling hand, and said words so powerful that Prince would remember them for the rest of his life. Words that revealed who Michael truly was when the doors were closed. Words that explained more about Michael Jackson than any song ever could. What made Prince cry that night? Why was Michael so calm, so intentional in that moment? And what exactly did he say that changed how Prince saw his father forever? Stay with this story, because this is not about the king of pop. This is about a father and a broken child who needed him. The dining room was warm, softly lit by a chandelier that cast gentle shadows on the walls. The adults were seated around the table, voices low, polite laughter rising and falling as conversations drifted from one topic to another. To anyone watching, it looked like a normal family evening. But Prince Jackson wasn't at the table. He was underneath it, curled up beneath the polished wood. His knees pulled tightly to his chest. Prince pressed his forehead against his arms. He was only a child, but the weight on his chest felt far too heavy for someone his age. Tears slid down his cheeks and soaked into the sleeves of his shirt. He tried to breathe quietly. He didn't want to interrupt anyone. He didn't want to be noticed. Prince had learned early how to disappear. The voices above him felt distant, like they belonged to another world. Words floated down, some serious, some casual, but all of them reminded him of something he didn't fully understand yet. His life wasn't normal. His father wasn't just a dad. His last name wasn't just a name. And tonight, that realization hurt more than usual. Earlier that day, Prince had overheard something he wasn't meant to hear. A comment, a whisper, a reminder that his father, Michael Jackson, wasn't seen by the world the way other fathers were seen. The words weren't cruel, not exactly, but they were heavy, adult words, complicated words. And Prince didn't know where to put the feelings they left behind. So he crawled under the table, the one place that felt small enough to hold him. Above him, Michael Jackson sat quietly, listening more than speaking. His posture was gentle, his movements careful. To anyone else, he looked calm. But Michael felt it immediately, the absence. He glanced toward Prince's chair. Empty. Michael's eyes shifted subtly, scanning the room. He didn't ask where Prince was. He didn't interrupt the conversation. Instead, his gaze dropped downward. And that's when he saw it. A small pair of sneakers beneath the table, slightly turned inward. Still, Michael froze. He knew that posture. He had lived that posture as a child himself. Hiding, shrinking, trying to make emotions smaller so they wouldn't explode. His chest tightened. The conversation around him faded into noise. Michael slowly pushed his chair back, the legs barely making a sound against the floor. "Excuse me," he said softly, his voice calm, controlled. No one questioned him. They never did when he spoke that way. Michael stood and quietly knelt down beside the table. The polished surface reflected his face as he lowered himself. And then, there he was, Prince, crying. Michael didn't speak at first. He didn't rush. He didn't ask what's wrong. He didn't tell him to stop crying. He simply reached out his hand. Prince flinched at first, startled, then looked up. His eyes were red, his face blotchy, his lips trembling. When he realized it was his father, his breath caught in his throat. "Daddy," he whispered. Michael's hand stayed open, palm up, steady. Prince slowly placed a small hand into it. Michael closed his fingers gently around his son's hand, grounding him. "I see you," Michael said quietly. Those 3 words broke something open inside Prince. The tears came faster now. His shoulders shook. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. Michael leaned closer, lowering his voice even more so only Prince could hear. "You don't have to hide from me," Michael said. Prince shook his head, crying harder. Michael stayed right there on the floor, his expensive jacket brushing the ground, completely unconcerned with appearances. And then Michael said the words that Prince would carry with him forever. Prince's small hand was still wrapped tightly in Michael's. The dining room noises above them continued. Forks touching plates, glasses being set down, voices overlapping. But under the table, time felt suspended. It was just a father and a son in a private world carved out of silence and trembling breath. Michael shifted slightly, lowering himself so he was eye level with Prince. His voice remained soft, but there was a seriousness in it, a careful intention. "Look at me," Michael said gently. Prince hesitated, then slowly lifted his head. His eyes were red and glossy, filled with confusion, fear, and something deeper, shame. Shame for crying. Shame for feeling weak. Shame he didn't know how to explain. Michael saw all of it. "I know you're hurting," Michael continued. "And I know you don't even know how to explain why yet. That's okay." Prince swallowed hard. They were talking," he whispered. "About you, about stuff. And at school, too. They say things. They look at me like I'm different." Michael's grip tightened just a little, not enough to hurt, just enough to reassure. "You are different," Michael said calmly. Prince's face crumpled again. "I don't want to be." Michael nodded slowly, understanding far too well. "I didn't want to be either," he said. Prince looked up sharply. "You didn't." Michael gave a small, sad smile. "No, I wanted to be invisible. I wanted to be normal. I wanted to disappear into a crowd and not have anyone point or whisper or expect something from me." Prince's breathing slowed as he listened. This wasn't a lecture. This was a confession. "When I was your age," Michael continued, "I used to hide too. Sometimes under tables. Sometimes in closets. Sometimes inside my own head. I thought if I stayed quiet enough, small enough, the world would forget I was there." Prince stared at his father, surprised. He had never imagined Michael Jackson, the man on posters, the man people screamed for, wanted to disappear. "But the world didn't forget," Michael said softly. "And that wasn't my fault. Just like this isn't yours." Prince wiped his face with his sleeve. "But everyone knows you. They don't know me. They just know your name." Michael took a slow breath. This was the moment he had always feared and prepared for. The moment his child began to understand the weight of the last name he carried. "That's why I need you to hear something very important," Michael said, leaning closer. "And I need you to remember it for the rest of your life." Prince nodded. Michael looked him straight in the eyes. "You are not my fame," Michael said. "You are not my mistakes. You are not what people say about me." Prince's lip trembled. "You are not responsible for my life," Michael continued. "You are not responsible for making anyone comfortable. You don't owe the world anything just because of who your father is." Prince whispered. "But they expect things." "I know," Michael said, "and that's unfair. And I'm sorry." That word, sorry, hit Prince harder than anything else. "I'm sorry," Michael repeated, his voice cracking just slightly, "that the world put adult weight on your shoulders before you were ready. I'm sorry that you feel like you have to hide to feel safe." Prince squeezed Michael's hand. "Sometimes I feel like if I cry, I'm doing something wrong." Michael shook his head immediately. No, baby. Crying means you're human. It means you're listening to your heart." Michael paused, then said the words slowly, carefully, as if carving them into Prince's memory. "Strength is not pretending you don't feel pain. Strength is letting yourself feel it, and still choosing to be kind." Prince stared at him. "But you're strong," he said. "You don't cry in front of people." Michael gave a sad, honest smile. "I cry more than you know. I just learned to do it where people couldn't see. And I don't want that for you." The noise above them shifted. Someone laughed loudly. A chair moved. But Michael didn't move. "I don't want you to grow up thinking you have to hide your tears," he said. "I don't want you to become a performer just to survive. I want you to be free." Prince hesitated, then asked the question that had been sitting heavy in his chest. "Dad, are you okay?" Michael didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached up and gently brushed Prince's hair back from his forehead. "I'm trying to be," he said honestly, And you helped me more than you know. Prince frowned. How? Michael smiled softly. By being real, by crying, by telling the truth, by trusting me. Prince took a shaky breath. I was scared you'd be mad. Michael's expression changed instantly, firm but loving. Listen to me, he said. There is nothing you could feel that would make me angry with you. Ever. Your feelings are safe with me. Prince's shoulders finally relaxed. And one more thing, Michael added. Prince looked at him. When the world makes you feel small, Michael said, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that under all the noise, all the fame, all the stories, your father is right here, on the floor, holding your hand. Prince nodded, tears slipping again, but this time they felt different, lighter. Michael slowly stood, still holding Prince's hand. Come on, he said gently. You don't have to hide anymore. Not tonight. Prince crawled out from under the table. When he stood up, Michael pulled him into a quiet, protective embrace. No one at the table said a word. No one needed to. Prince rested his head against his father's chest. And in that moment, he understood something he would carry forever. Michael Jackson wasn't just a man the world watched. He was the man who knelt on the floor, so his son wouldn't feel alone. Prince stayed pressed against his father's chest longer than usual. Michael didn't rush him. He knew that moments like this couldn't be forced to end. They had to dissolve on their own. Eventually, Prince loosened his grip, but Michael kept one hand on his son's shoulder as they moved away from the table and into the quieter living room. The house felt different there. Softer, dimmer, lamps instead of overhead lights. A space Michael had intentionally designed to feel safe, away from cameras, away from expectations. Michael sat on the couch and gently guided Prince to sit beside him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Silence, when it wasn't filled with fear, could be healing. Prince swung his legs slightly, staring at the floor. Michael watched him carefully. He had learned over the years that children often spoke the hardest truths only after you stopped asking questions. Finally, Prince whispered, Daddy? Yes, baby. Prince took a deep breath. Can I tell you something, but you can't get sad? Michael felt a quiet ache in his chest. I can't promise I won't feel, Michael said honestly, but I promise I can handle it, whatever it is. Prince nodded, clearly gathering courage. Sometimes, he began, I'm scared that one day you won't come home. Michael's breath caught, though he didn't show it. What makes you feel that way? He asked gently. Prince shrugged, eyes still down. You're always tired, and people talk about you like you're not real, like you're a story. And sometimes I hear grown-ups say things like, he won't last, or he's not okay. Prince's voice trembled. And at school, kids say stuff. They say famous people disappear, or that bad things always happen to famous people. Michael closed his eyes for a brief second. Sometimes, Prince continued, I think, what if you disappear too? Michael turned fully toward his son. Prince, he said softly, look at me. Prince did. I need you to understand something, Michael said. I am not a story. I am not a headline. I am not what people say when they think children aren't listening. Michael placed Prince's hand over his own heart. I'm right here. I'm alive. And as long as I'm breathing, I'm fighting to be here with you. Prince's eyes filled again. But you look sad a lot. Michael nodded slowly. I am sad sometimes. That's true. I've been sad for a long time. But sadness doesn't mean I'm leaving. It means I'm human. Prince whispered, I don't want to lose you. Michael pulled him closer, wrapping an arm around him. I don't want to leave you, Michael said, his voice steady but full of emotion. Everything I do, every rehearsal, every decision, is because of you and your sister and your brother. You are the reason I'm still standing. Prince hesitated. Even when people are mean? Especially then, Michael replied. Prince was quiet for a moment, then asked a question that had clearly been haunting him. Is that why you wear masks sometimes? To hide. Michael smiled sadly. Yes and no. Prince looked up, curious. I wore masks to protect you, Michael explained, because I didn't want the world to see you before you were ready. But I also wore them because I didn't want the world to hurt you the way it hurt me. Prince thought about this. But hiding hurts too. Michael's eyes softened. You're right, he said. And that's something I'm still learning. Michael leaned back slightly, choosing his words carefully. When I was a child, he said, no one asked me how I felt. No one asked what I was afraid of. I was expected to be strong, quiet, perfect, and I thought that was the only way to survive. He looked at Prince. But I don't want you to survive, Michael said. I want you to live. Prince frowned. What's the difference? Michael smiled gently. Surviving is getting through the day. Living is feeling safe enough to be yourself. Prince leaned against his father again. Sometimes I feel like I have to be careful all the time. I know, Michael said, and that's why I need to tell you something important. Michael took Prince's face gently in his hands, not forcing eye contact, but inviting it. You are allowed to be angry, he said. You are allowed to be scared. You are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to be a child. Prince listened intently. And you are never responsible for protecting me, Michael added. That's my job. I protect you. Prince's voice cracked. But I want to protect you too. Michael smiled, touched. Loving me is enough. They sat quietly for a while. Then Prince spoke again, almost in a whisper. Sometimes I think, what if people only love you because you're famous? What if they don't really see you? Michael felt that question land deep inside him. That's a very smart question, he said quietly. Do you feel that way? Prince asked. Michael didn't lie. Yes, he said. A lot. Prince frowned. That's not fair. Michael chuckled softly. Life isn't always fair. Then Michael said something Prince would remember forever. That's why what matters most to me is this, he said, tapping Prince's chest gently. That you see me, not as Michael Jackson, but as your dad. Prince nodded firmly. I see you. Michael smiled, eyes shining. And I see you, he said, not as my legacy, not as my last name, but as my son, my heart. Prince finally relaxed completely, his earlier fear easing into something warmer, trust. That night, Prince fell asleep on the couch, his head resting on Michael's shoulder. Michael didn't move. He stayed there, holding his son, listening to his breathing, silently promising himself something. No matter how loud the world became, his children would never have to face it alone. Prince was still asleep when Michael carefully adjusted the blanket over him. The house had gone completely silent, the kind of silence that only comes deep into the night, when even the walls seem to rest. Michael stayed seated on the couch, afraid that if he moved too quickly, he might wake his son and pull him back into fear. Prince's breathing was slow and steady now, peaceful. Michael studied his face, the softness, the innocence, the vulnerability that the world would one day try to harden. And in that moment, a realization settled heavily in Michael's chest. Fear wasn't something Prince had invented on his own. It had leaked into him from the cracks in Michael's own life. Carefully, Michael lifted Prince and carried him upstairs. Prince stirred slightly, but didn't wake as Michael placed him in bed. Michael tucked him in the same way he always did. Precise, gentle, ritualistic. He brushed Prince's hair back and kissed his forehead. I'm here, Michael whispered. Always. Michael stepped out of the room and closed the door softly behind him, but he didn't go to bed. Instead, he walked down the long hallway toward his private studio. He turned on only one lamp, letting the rest of the room remain dim. The familiar smell of wood, paper, and old instruments wrapped around him. This room had always been his refuge, the one place where he could speak without being interrupted, judged, or misunderstood. Michael sat at the piano, but didn't play. He stared at his hands. They were shaking. The conversation with Prince had opened something inside him that he couldn't ignore. For years, Michael had told himself that he was protecting his children simply by keeping them hidden, sheltered, away from the noise. But tonight, he realized something painful. Protection without preparation was its own kind of risk. Prince wasn't afraid of monsters. He was afraid of losing his father. And that fear had come from watching Michael struggle in silence. Michael leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I can't let them carry my fear, he whispered to himself. For the first time in a long while, Michael allowed himself to think about something he usually avoided. What would happen to his children if he wasn't there to explain things anymore, to translate the world for them, to protect their hearts the way he never felt protected? He stood up and walked to the desk in the corner of the studio. He opened a drawer and took out a notebook. It wasn't a lyric book. It wasn't music. It was a journal he almost never touched. Michael opened to a blank page and stared at it for a long time before writing the first line. If my children ever read this, it means I didn't get the chance to tell them everything. His pen hovered, then continued. So I need to say it now. He wrote slowly, deliberately, as if every word mattered more than the last. Prince, Paris, my baby. If you're reading this, I want you to know that none of what happens to me is your fault. Ever. Michael paused, wiping his eyes. The world will talk. People will say things. Some will be kind. Many will not. But you must never believe that my struggles mean I didn't want to be here. You are the reason I stayed. He stopped writing and leaned back, overwhelmed. For so long, Michael had lived as if endurance was strength, pushing through pain, hiding cracks, performing even when his soul felt exhausted. But Prince's tears under that table had shown him something else. Strength wasn't silence. Strength was honesty. Michael closed a notebook and stood again. He walked into the hallway and stopped outside Paris's room. He opened the door slightly and watched her sleep, her face calm, her hair spread across the pillow. She had always been observant. Too observant sometimes. She noticed moods, silences. The way Michael smiled sometimes faded too quickly. Then he checked on Blanket, curled tightly around his stuffed toy, one small hand gripping the fabric as if it anchored him to the world. Michael felt his heart ache. I have to do better, he whispered. That night, Michael made a decision. Not loud, not dramatic, but firm. He would stop pretending that shielding his children from everything was enough. He would start talking to them. Really talking. Not burdening them. Not frightening them. But letting them know that sadness didn't mean abandonment. That vulnerability didn't mean danger. And most importantly, he would stop disappearing emotionally when things became too heavy. The next morning, Michael woke early. He made breakfast himself, something he insisted on doing when he could. Prince came downstairs rubbing his eyes, surprised to see his father already awake. Daddy? Prince asked. Did you sleep? Michael smiled. A little. Prince hesitated, then climbed onto a chair at the table. Are you still sad? He asked carefully. Michael considered the question, then answered honestly. Yes, he said, but I'm okay. Prince nodded, accepting this in a way only children can. Michael reached across the table and took Prince's hand. Thank you for telling me how you felt last night, Michael said. That was very brave. Prince shrugged. I was scared. And you said it anyway, Michael replied. That's courage. Prince smiled slightly. Over following days, Michael began changing small things. He spent more time sitting with his children, without distractions. He explained rehearsals instead of disappearing into them. He laughed more freely at home, even when he felt tired. He let himself be seen, not as a performer, not as an icon, but as a father who sometimes struggled and still showed up. And slowly, Prince changed too. He stopped flinching at raised voices on television. He asked questions more freely. He slept through the night more often. One afternoon, as they sat drawing together, Prince looked up and said casually, I'm not scared you'll disappear anymore. Michael felt his throat tighten. Why not? He asked. Prince smiled. Because you told me you're fighting to stay. And because you hold my hand when I'm scared. Michael closed his eyes briefly. That promise he had made in the quiet, that his children would never face the world alone, was no longer just a thought. It was becoming a way of living. And Michael didn't know how much time he had left. But he knew this. Whatever time remained, it would be honest, it would be present, and it would be filled with love spoken out loud. The peace Michael had begun to build inside the house was fragile. He knew that. Peace always was. It lasted only a few days before the outside world reminded him that no matter how carefully he protected his children, reality had a way of forcing its way in. It started with a phone call. Michael was in the living room with Prince, helping him with homework, when his assistant's name flashed on the screen. Michael hesitated before answering. Something in his chest tightened. Instinct, maybe. Yes. Michael said softly, keeping his voice calm. The pause on the other end was too long. There's something you should know, the assistant said carefully. A photo agency is asking questions. About the kids. About Prince specifically. Michael's hand stilled on the table. What kind of questions? He asked. They're saying a source claims Prince was seen crying under a table at private gathering. They're framing it as instability at home. Michael closed his eyes. Of course they were. Did you say anything? Michael asked. No, the assistant replied quickly. I shut it down. But they're fishing, and once they start, they don't stop. Michael thanked him and ended the call. For a moment, he didn't move. Prince looked up from his paper. Daddy, he asked, are we in trouble? Michael's heart clenched. No, he said immediately, reaching for Prince's hand. No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. Prince studied his face carefully, searching for cracks. Is it because I cried? Prince asked quietly. Michael knelt in front of him. No, he said firmly. It's because some people don't understand feelings, and some people try to turn feelings into stories. Prince frowned. But crying isn't bad. No, Michael said. Crying is human. That night, Michael barely slept. He lay awake thinking about the balance he was trying to maintain, protecting his children without suffocating them, being honest without frightening them, existing in a world that watched every breath he took and waited for him to fail. And now, that world was circling his son. The next morning, Michael made a decision. He called a family meeting. Prince, Paris, and Blanket sat on the couch, confused but attentive. Michael sat across from them, his posture calm, but his eyes serious. I want to talk to you about something important, Michael said gently. And I want you to listen, but I don't want you to be scared. Paris tilted her head. That usually means it's serious. Michael smiled faintly. It is, but serious doesn't mean bad. He took a breath. There are people outside this house whose job is to watch us, he said. Sometimes they watch because they're curious. Sometimes because they want stories. And sometimes because they don't understand that children are allowed to feel things. Prince's shoulders stiffened. Michael noticed immediately. Prince, Michael said softly, look at me. Prince met his eyes. I need you to hear this very clearly, Michael continued. Your feelings are not secrets. They are not weaknesses. And you never need to hide them from me. But if people see, Prince started. Michael shook his head gently. That's my job, he said. Not yours. The children were quiet. I didn't have anyone protect my feelings when I was little, Michael said. So sometimes I forget that protection doesn't mean silence. It means standing in front of you when the world gets loud. Paris swallowed. Are they saying bad things about us? Michael paused. They might try, he said honestly, but trying doesn't mean succeeding. That afternoon, Michael made calls he usually avoided. Lawyers, advisors, security. Not with panic, with clarity. And for the first time, he gave a specific instruction. No stories involving my children's emotions. No speculation. No commentary. If they push, you push back. There was resistance, of course. There always was. You know how this works. One advisor said, the more you push, the more they push. Michael's voice was calm, but unmovable. Then they push against me, he said. Not my kids. That evening, Michael sat alone in his room, staring at the ceiling. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him. Not as a performer, not as a symbol, but as a father who knew the damage of being exposed too young. A memory surfaced uninvited. A young Michael, backstage, crying quietly while adults argue about contracts and lighting and timing. No one had knelt down. No one had taken his hand. Michael sat up suddenly. I won't repeat this, he whispered. Later that night, Prince came into Michael's room, holding his blanket. Can I sleep here? Prince asked. Michael opened the covers without hesitation. Prince curled against him, quiet but awake. Daddy. Prince said after a long silence. Are you scared of them? Michael considered the question. Yes, he said honestly. Sometimes. Prince nodded. But you're still standing. Michael smiled into the darkness. Yes, he said, because of you. The next day, a short statement was released. Simple, firm, unmistakable. Michael Jackson's children are private individuals. Emotional expression is not evidence of instability. Any attempt to exploit a child's vulnerability will be addressed accordingly. No drama, no explanation, just boundaries. Inside the house, life continued. Breakfast, homework, laughter, quiet moments. Outside, the noise shifted, looking for another angle. But something had changed. Prince noticed it first. You're not hiding today, he said one afternoon as they walked together in the garden. Michael looked down at him. Do you want me to? Prince shook his head. I like when you're here. Like this. Michael squeezed his hand. That night, Michael returned to journal. Today I chose my children over the narrative. He wrote, I don't know how long I can keep the world from touching them, but I know this. They will never face it alone. He closed a notebook and turned off the light. Outside, the world waited. Inside, a father stood guard. The change didn't happen all at once. It never did. It came quietly, in small moments Michael almost missed, moments so ordinary they would have meant nothing to anyone else, but to him, they felt monumental. It began on a rainy afternoon. The sky outside the house was heavy and gray, rain tapping gently against the tall windows. The kind of day that made everything slower, softer. Michael sat at the piano in the living room, not playing for an audience, not rehearsing, just letting his fingers wander. Soft notes filled the room, unfinished melodies that existed only for that moment. Prince sat nearby on the floor, drawing. Blanket was asleep on the couch, thumb in his mouth. Blanket pulled up to his chin. Paris was upstairs, lost in a book. Michael glanced at Prince between chords. You're very quiet today, Michael said gently. Prince shrugged without looking up. I'm thinking. Michael nodded. He didn't push. He had learned that silence was sometimes a doorway, not a wall. After a while, Prince spoke again. Daddy. Yes, sweetheart. Do you ever feel like your chest gets tight when you think about stuff? Michael's fingers stilled on the keys. Yes, he said softly. I do. Prince nodded, as if confirming something to himself. He stood up, walked closer, and sat on the bench beside Michael. It happened again today. Prince said, at the tutors. Michael turned fully toward him. What happened? One of the assistants whispered something. I didn't hear all of it, but I heard my name, and I felt that tight feeling. Prince pressed his hand to his chest. Like before, Michael felt a familiar surge of protectiveness, but he kept his voice calm. And what did you do? He asked. Prince thought for a moment. I remember what you said, Prince replied. Michael's breath caught slightly. What did I say? Prince looked up at him, eyes steady. You said my feelings aren't a problem, Prince said, and that it's your job to stand in front of me when the world gets loud. Michael swallowed hard. So I told myself it wasn't about me, Prince continued, and I took a breath, and it went away. For a moment, Michael couldn't speak. 40 years of his own childhood flashed through his mind, moments when his chest had tightened and no one had named it, no one had explained it, no one had stood between him and the noise. And now, his son was using words Michael himself had only learned as an adult. Prince, Michael said quietly, his voice thick, can I tell you something? Prince nodded. When I was your age, Michael said, I didn't know what that feeling was. I thought it meant I was weak, or wrong, or in trouble. Prince frowned. But it's not. No, Michael said firmly. It's not. Prince leaned against him, resting his head on Michael's shoulder. Michael wrapped an arm around him, holding him there, feeling the simple, grounding weight of his child. A few minutes later, Paris came downstairs. She took in the scene, Michael and Prince on the piano bench, quiet, connected, and said nothing. She simply crossed the room and sat on the other side of Michael, leaning in. You okay? Paris asked Prince softly. Prince nodded. Yeah. Paris looked at Michael. "You're doing that thing again." Michael smiled faintly. "What thing?" "The quiet, listening thing," Paris said. "When you don't try to fix everything." Michael chuckled under his breath. "I'm learning." That evening, after the children were asleep, Michael stood in the hallway outside their rooms longer than usual. He watched Prince sleep. His face relaxed, no sign of the tightness that had once folded him in on himself. He watched Paris, sprawled across her bed, one arm hanging over the side, completely unguarded. He watched Blanket, clutching his blanket. Safe. And something inside Michael loosened. Later, alone in his room, Michael sat at the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. He thought about the words Prince had repeated. "It's your job to stand in front of me when the world gets loud." Michael realized something then, something that felt like a quiet revelation rather than a dramatic epiphany. He wasn't just protecting his children. He was rewriting memory. Every time he stood between them and the noise, he was standing between his younger self and the noise too. Every time he named an emotion instead of silencing it, he was giving his inner child the words he never had. The cycle wasn't just breaking. It was healing backward. A few days later, during breakfast, something unexpected happened. Blanket dropped a spoon. Milk splashed on the table. Normally, the room would have gone quiet, that instinctive pause children sometimes have, waiting to see if they've done something wrong. Michael noticed it instantly. Blanket froze. Michael didn't. "It's okay," Michael said immediately, reaching for a napkin. "Accidents happen." Blanket blinked. "I'm not in trouble?" Michael met his eyes. "Never for an accident." Blanket relaxed, a small smile creeping onto his face. Prince watched the exchange closely. Later, as Michael walked with Prince in the garden, Prince said quietly, "That was fast." "What was?" "You didn't even think about it," Prince said. "You just said it was okay." Michael smiled. "I've had a lot of practice learning what not to do." Prince considered that. "I think you're good at this," Prince said, "at being a dad." Michael stopped walking. He knelt in front of Prince, hands resting on Prince's shoulders. "Listen to me," Michael said gently. "I won't always get it right. I'll make mistakes. But if I ever do something that hurts you, I need you to tell me." Prince nodded. "I will." "And I promise," Michael continued, "I will listen." Prince smiled, not the wide, carefree smile of childhood, but something deeper, something trusting. That night, Michael wrote one final entry in his journal. "Today my son used my words to calm his own fear. That is something no award, no record, no applause could ever give me. If this is my legacy, children who feel safe inside themselves, then I have done something right." He closed a notebook and placed it on the nightstand. Outside, the world was still loud. But inside that house, something precious had taken root, a language of safety, a vocabulary of care, a silence that wasn't empty but full. And for the first time in his life, Michael Jackson felt something he had searched for since childhood. Not perfection, not redemption, but peace.